And this is what they're waiting for. An appearance on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, which has seen so many.
There are moments inside the world of royal pageantry that go far beyond the surface of what the cameras capture. Moments where a single choice, a gesture so seemingly small and so visually contained, carries within it the full weight of history, grief, love, rivalry, and institutional power all at once. Most people watching a state banquet see gowns and candlelight and the practiced choreography of monarchy on display. But those who understand the language of the royal family, the unspoken codes embedded in every carefully considered detail, know that sometimes the most seismic statements are made not in speeches or press releases, but in the quiet, deliberate act of placing a particular piece of jewelry on one's head and walking into a room full of people who understand exactly what it means. That is precisely what happened when Catherine, Princess of Wales, stepped into the light wearing the Cambridge Lovers' Knot tiara, and the room, by all accounts, changed completely. Not because a tiara is merely beautiful, though this one is breathtaking beyond measure. Not because wearing diamonds to a state banquet is unusual, because it is not. But because this specific tiara, with its 19 arching diamonds and its 19 dangling Baroque pearls, carries a name and a face and a memory that can never be separated from it. It carries Diana. And when Catherine wears it, Diana walks into the room too. That is something that no amount of palace protocol, no carefully worded official statement, and no competing piece of jewelry from any other royal collection can fully compete with. And reportedly, Queen Camilla knows it. To understand why this moment cuts as deeply as it does, you have to begin at the beginning. You have to go back over a century to understand what this tiara is, where it came from, and why its history makes every appearance it makes at a royal event an act loaded with meaning that extends far beyond fashion. The Cambridge Lovers' Knot tiara was created in 1913 for Queen Mary, the wife of King George V, and one of the most formidable and jewelry-obsessed queens in modern British royal history. Queen Mary was not a woman who did things casually. She was precise, deliberate, and deeply aware of the symbolic power of royal adornment. When she commissioned this particular piece from the royal jewelers, she was drawing on a design rooted in her own family heritage. The tiara was modeled after a headpiece that had belonged to her grandmother, Princess Augusta of Hesse-Kassel, a piece that Queen Mary had always admired and wanted to see reimagined in a form worthy of her position as Queen of England. To create it, she made a decision that speaks to just how seriously she took this commission. She melted down another tiara from her personal collection, the Ladies of England tiara, to provide the materials. She did not simply order something new. She transformed something she already owned into something she believed would last through generations. That instinct, as history has proven, was entirely correct. The tiara that emerged from that commission is a masterpiece of Edwardian design. 19 diamond arches rise from the base, each one connected by elegant lovers' knot bows rendered in brilliant diamonds. From each arch hangs a single pear-shaped Baroque pearl, dropping with a graceful weight that catches light differently with every movement of the wearer's head. The effect is simultaneously regal and romantic, imposing and delicate, ancient in its references and utterly timeless in its impact. Gemologists and jewelry historians have estimated its current value at approximately $135 million, though any monetary figure attached to an object of this historical and emotional significance feels somewhat beside the point. Some things are worth more than money can express. After Queen Mary passed away in 1953, the tiara passed to her granddaughter, Queen Elizabeth II. The late Queen wore it on several occasions in the 1950s, but over time developed preferences for other pieces in the extraordinary royal collection. The Lovers' Knot, magnificent as it was, spent considerable periods in the royal vaults, waiting for the right person, waiting for a moment that would bring it back to the center of royal history. That moment arrived in 1981, and it arrived in the form of a young woman from Northamptonshire named Diana Spencer. When Queen Elizabeth II lent the Cambridge Lovers' Knot tiara to Diana shortly after her marriage to Prince Charles, it was more than a practical gesture. It was a symbol of welcome and of status. The tiara was associated with the title of Princess of Wales in a deep and historical sense, and its bestowal upon Diana was the institution saying, in the clearest possible terms, that this young woman now occupied one of the most significant roles in the British royal family. Diana's relationship with the tiara was complicated and deeply human, which is perhaps why it suits her memory so perfectly. Despite its extraordinary beauty, the piece is genuinely heavy. 19 diamond arches and 19 hanging pearls, all supported by a rigid frame that sits across the top of the head, create a weight that even the most experienced tiara wearers find demanding after several hours. Diana wore it regardless. She wore it to diplomatic receptions and state banquets and formal events across more than a decade of royal life, even as she privately noted the discomfort it caused her. She chose it again and again not because it was easy, but because it was hers, because it suited her, because something about its combination of diamonds and pearls and that graceful, slightly melancholy drop of the Baroque pearls spoke to something in her own character. Diana was beautiful and luminous and beloved, and she also carried weight that the world could sometimes see in her eyes even when she was smiling. The lover's knot tiara, heavy and gorgeous and impossible to ignore, understood her. Photographs of Diana wearing the tiara became some of the most iconic images of her entire public life. There is one in particular, taken at a formal engagement in the 1980s, where she is looking directly into the camera with an expression of complete composure that just barely conceals something far more complex underneath. The tiara sits perfectly on her head. The pearls fall exactly right. She looks like exactly what she was, the most famous woman in the world, wearing a crown that was made for her before she was born. Those images traveled around the planet. They became part of the visual vocabulary of the 20th century. When Charles and Diana's marriage collapsed and their divorce was finalized in 1996, the tiara went back to the palace. It belonged to the role of Princess of Wales, not to the individual who had occupied it, and when Diana was stripped of her royal title, she was stripped of access to the pieces associated with it. That loss was one of many she experienced in that period. 1 year later, she was gone. And the Cambridge lover's knot tiara went back into its case, back into the vaults, held in storage while the palace quietly grappled with the impossible task of contextualizing the legacy of a woman who had meant everything to an entire generation. For nearly 18 years, the tiara was not seen in public. It existed in its vault the way Diana's memory existed in the collective consciousness, present, impossible to ignore, and waiting for the right moment to emerge. That moment came in 2015 when Catherine, by then 4 years into her role as Princess of Wales and increasingly confident in how she was shaping that role, wore the Cambridge lover's knot tiara publicly for the first time. The response was immediate and deeply emotional. Side-by-side photographs of Diana and Catherine in the same tiara spread across every newspaper and social media platform within hours. The visual similarity was striking. The emotional resonance was even more so. Here was the woman who now held the same title Diana had held, wearing the same piece Diana had made synonymous with that title, carrying that memory forward in the most graceful and visible way imaginable. In the years since that first appearance, Catherine has worn the lover's knot tiara more than any other piece in the royal collection. She has worn it 15 times across a range of formal occasions, returning to it with a consistency that speaks not to a lack of alternatives, because the royal collection is extraordinary and her access to it considerable, but to a deliberate and considered choice. Royal experts and former palace insiders have been clear on this point. Catherine's repeated choice of this specific tiara is not accidental. It is not simply because it suits her coloring or complements her style, though both of those things are true. It is because wearing it is an act of remembrance. It is because when William sits across a state banquet table and sees his wife wearing the piece of jewelry most associated with his mother, something happens in that moment that no other gesture could replicate. Catherine never met Diana. She was a 15-year-old girl living an ordinary life in Berkshire when Diana died in Paris in August 1997. She cannot share memories of Diana with William because she has none of her own. But she can give him this. She can wear his mother's tiara and keep her present in the room. Former royal butler Grant Harold, who spent years inside the palace and understands its emotional undercurrents as well as anyone, has spoken about this dimension of Catherine's tiara choices with genuine insight. He has explained that the emotional significance of Catherine choosing the lover's knot repeatedly is not something that should be minimized or reduced to fashion commentary. It is, he believes, one of the most consistently thoughtful gestures Catherine makes in her role as Princess of Wales. It tells William, without words, that his mother is not forgotten. It tells the public the same thing. And it tells the history books something important too, that the woman who now holds Diana's title holds her memory with equal care. Catherine's engagement ring, the oval sapphire surrounded by 14 diamonds that William proposed with, was Diana's engagement ring. When Catherine mentioned publicly in 2023 that she had never needed to resize the ring because it fit her perfectly from the beginning, the observation carried a weight she may or may not have intended. The ring that Diana wore fits Catherine as if it were made for her. The tiara that Diana loved looks at home on Catherine's head in photographs that make people catch their breath. There is something in this continuity that goes beyond coincidence and enters the territory of something harder to define but impossible to dismiss. Which brings us to the events that have generated so much discussion and emotion among royal watchers and across social media in recent months. On the evening of March 18, 2026, the British royal family hosted a state banquet at Windsor Castle in honor of the President of Nigeria and his wife. State banquets at Windsor are among the most formal and visually spectacular events in the royal calendar. The long gallery is set with the full weight of centuries of history. The table stretches seemingly forever, set with gold plate and crystal and flowers arranged with a precision that only the most practiced of royal households can achieve. Every detail is considered. Every guest is placed. Every piece of clothing and every jewel worn by every member of the royal family is noted and analyzed, and in the age of instant social media, broadcast globally within minutes of the first photographs appearing. Queen Camilla attended wearing the Belgian sapphire tiara, a magnificent piece from the late Queen's collection that carries its own significant history and its own considerable beauty. She was accompanied by Cartier bracelets from the Queen Mother's collection and a diamond serpent necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. She looked, by every objective measure, exactly as a queen consort should look at a state banquet. Composed, beautifully dressed, carrying the weight of the occasion with the practiced ease of a woman who has spent years learning how to inhabit that role. And then Catherine arrived. She wore a deep crimson gown, color that photographs with extraordinary drama and presence. On her head, catching the light of Windsor's chandeliers, was the Cambridge Lover's Knot tiara, the 19 arching diamonds, the 19 dangling Baroque pearls. Diana's tiara, glittering above the face of the woman who was already, in the hearts of the British public and in the eyes of the institution itself, the future of the monarchy. By multiple accounts from royal sources and observers present at the event or close to those who were, the atmosphere in the room shifted perceptibly when Catherine entered. Not in a hostile way, not in a dramatic or confrontational way, but in a way that happens when something profoundly symbolic occurs in a space full of people who understand symbolism. Cameras captured the moment. Social media had the images within the hour. And the commentary that followed was intense, specific, and deeply felt. To understand why Camilla is reportedly in tears over this, you have to understand the particular cruelty of her position, because cruelty is not too strong a word for what she experiences each time the Lover's Knot tiara appears on Catherine's head and the world fills once again with images of Diana. Camilla Parker Bowles did not enter the royal family through an easy door. There is no version of her story that does not begin with the acknowledgement that her long relationship with Charles, conducted across years when he was married to Diana, caused incalculable pain to a woman the world loved absolutely. The British public, who had embraced Diana with a depth of feeling that went far beyond ordinary celebrity admiration, held Camilla responsible for a significant portion of Diana's suffering. That judgment was not entirely fair in all its dimensions, because the collapse of Charles and Diana's marriage involved complexities that extended beyond any single relationship, but it was felt deeply and it has proven extraordinarily persistent. Nearly 3 decades after Diana's death, the emotional accounting has not been closed. Camilla has worked genuinely hard to improve her public standing. Her advocacy work, particularly around the causes of domestic abuse and sexual violence, has been consistent and meaningful. She has conducted herself as queen with a dignity that has earned her a degree of acceptance she did not have in 2005 when she married Charles. She has done many things right. And still, the polls tell the story with uncomfortable clarity. In surveys of royal family popularity conducted in 2025, Camilla ranked 7th within her own family. As the reign